Justin Vaïsse is with me, the director of the Paris Peace Forum. Mr. Vaïsse, the French President Emmanuel Macron wasn't at this year's Munich Security Conference. Is there anything one should read into the fact that he didn't come here this year?
No, I don't think so, other than a very busy domestic schedule. He was here last year, he's been here many times, and more importantly, he has paid, I think, a very moving visit to Germany less than a month ago for the funerals or the memorial service for Wolfgang Schäuble. And I think you may remember he spoke German at the time, and then Stéphane Séjourné, the new French foreign minister, visited very early on when he was appointed, so I wouldn't read anything into that.
Yes, I was in the room in Parliament. It was indeed very surprising to many. He spoke very good German, and it was seen as him extending the hand to Germany once again to have closer ties and closer coordination. That's something that both countries have pretty much as a political standard. But when we're talking about reading the temperature of the understanding of both countries right now, when it comes to security, when it comes to strategic issues, how would you describe that climate right now?
So, a relationship or a policy achievement should always be measured against the difficulties, right? The constraints that there are. And the constraints are enormous. A war, massive economic turbulences, I would say, because of the Ukraine war, because of inflation, etc. Major energy questions, etc. So there are lots of constraints. And I think there's actually been progress in the past 6 months, I would say. Since October, there was a government-to-government meeting, and whether it's on the reform of the electricity market in the EU or on the reform of the growth pact at the EU level, I think there was work on the fundamental questions that separate France and Germany. So I do think that it's going in the right direction. I do think there's a momentum. We know what the constraints are on both sides politically, a coalition government in Germany, which makes it difficult to have quick decisions and quick deliberation. A situation in France where the European elections are coming and the Rassemblement National, the National Front is very high. So there are constraints, but I think things are going in the right direction. I think there's also convergence on Ukraine, and that's really, really important. We saw back-to-back Zelensky going to the two countries, or at least meeting the two leaders, and the two leaders giving him actually what he was looking for, which is both agreement and resources. It's also a joint answer to Trump's provocation, if you'd like. And I think it bodes very well for the future. So I'm actually more optimistic than I was during the summer. I think we have many signs of a better French-German relation.
At the same time, there is this kind of lingering sense that there's offers made from France, I think most recently also to provide protection under its nuclear umbrella, which is actually not comparable with the kind of protection that the United States is providing under NATO. But this offer is out there. And we also saw Donald Tusk, the Polish Prime Minister, in Berlin recently saying we need to sit together as part of the Weimar Triangle. That would be those three countries. They met as on the foreign minister level near Paris just last week. What do you read into that? Is there a new policy forming, particularly when it comes to thinking differently, thinking about defense? We all know that there's a different interpretation in France about what European defense should look like from the one that there is in Germany.
Yeah, so 10 years ago, I was lucky enough to be Director of Policy Planning at the French Foreign Ministry, and I attended several Weimar Triangle meetings, and it was the time when it was really going well. Radek Sikorski was actually foreign minister at the time. Laurent Fabius was the French minister, and
Mr. Sikorski's back. Yeah.
And Sikorski's back, and Mr. Steinmeier was foreign minister, and it was fantastic. It was a very good dynamic, if you'd like, a real momentum. We saw that on Ukraine in 2014, the reaction to Maidan, and then to the invasion of Crimea, and then Donbass. And so I think when the Weimar Triangle is strong and healthy, that's for the better for Europe. And I think that's what we're witnessing now, because Sikorski is back in Poland, and we have a government that is much more EU-oriented. And I think there's this sort of sense of momentum in the French-German relationship, I think helped by outside constraints that is here. So here again, I'm prudently optimistic. Yes, sometimes Germany doesn't answer exactly as the French would like, but we understand, the French-German relationship was always built against the odds, right? Against the constraints. It was never a given. If it's a miracle, it's because it's a triumph of the desire on both sides to either agree to disagree or go beyond the disagreement. And I think that's what we're seeing now. At least it's going in the right direction on Ukraine. I think on the EU, on the reaction, for example, to what Hungary is doing to the EU and Mr. Orban blocking the EU. So yeah, I think with Poland, I would say on the right side of the EU, I think we can be prudently optimistic that Europe will get its act together for Ukraine and that it will be able to do more even if we have Trump in the White House.
At the same time, both sides have their own interests, and you already hinted at that Germany and France, there's always been a commitment to work together. At the same time, often diametrically opposed views of how things should be done when it comes to European finance, but also to European energy. And you're mentioning that headway is being made, but talk to me about you speak to a lot of the movers and shakers who actually make policy in France. What's the chemistry like at the moment? Because what I'm hearing is there is not a very close link between the German Chancellor and Emmanuel Macron, so they can just pick up the phone and sort something.
What I hear is that it's true that it's not a close relationship, but fortunately the relationship is not beholden to only that relationship. The Franco-German relationship is not linked is not beholden to the exclusive link between Scholz and Macron. And evidently at many other levels, including ministers, whether Stéphane Séjourné or Bruno Le Maire, for example, is very close to Germany and wants to move things forward. That allows people to go beyond. So, for example, I mean the German economy couldn't be more different than the French, and so of course that sets us apart. Germany is an export machine that has been working splendidly during the growth of globalization. The French economy is based on different forces and strength.
But it's doing better than Germany right now.
Yeah, right now it's doing better, but it was always the case that sometimes Germany was doing better, sometimes, remember the 1990s and up until 2004-5, Germany was not doing so well, and then it had a splendid 15 years or so. So I would see a bit beyond that, and also other constraints. I mean, we speak a different language. And when I'm here at the Munich Security Conference, whenever I exchange, and that's a lot of times with German colleagues, I do it in English. And it's true that, unfortunately, French learning in Germany and German learning in French don't do very well right now. And so different economy, a different language, a different culture, even though we're neighbors. And so once again, what is really key is the willingness to actually go beyond these constraints of reality. And that's why it's a miracle, and it's a precious miracle that we should keep. It's because we are able, by political desire, to go beyond these constraints. And so for me, it's really important. And the first the first instinct is to say, oh gosh, they're against there, or to suspect Germans of putting their narrow economic interests forward, etc. That's always the first instinct, because it remains with us. We're a different country. But then the second reflex, and I think that's where there's a miracle, is to go beyond this and to find ways either to agree to disagree, or once again to go beyond that disagreement and find some kind of agreement. And that's key, and that's very precious for Europe as well.
What would you see as the next big test for the commitment actually for both sides to particularly take their security cooperation forward?
Trump, I guess. I mean, there's at least a 40% chance that Trump would win on November 5. It's not a given. If I had to bet today, I would bet on Biden, but there's a distinct chance that he would win. And so that would be both a challenge and, I guess, a jolt or a trigger. I hope at least that it can be a trigger. I think there's the feeling in France that what it has been preaching for years, I would say for decades, which is more European autonomy, more ability to build our own defense industry and to rely on ourselves, etc., that at last reality is catching up with what the French have been pleading for, and that the center of gravity of the debate is going towards the French position on European autonomy, on the idea of having a stronger defense base, on the necessity to be allies with the US, but to be able to act on our own, including if we have to defend ourselves. I'm not saying Putin attack Europe, but there might be things in the future in the Baltic states or somewhere, and for that we need to be able to act on our own and not rely on Uncle Sam.
Okay, Mr. Vaïsse, thank you very much for taking the time to speaking to DW today.
Thank you for your attention.